as Vincent was saying, we are in the midst of exceptionally turbulent times. And if we look back at 2020, we all see one single big challenge. And this was the effect of coronavirus pandemic on the world. Along with so many people, communities, and organizations worldwide, the coronavirus pandemic affected us in completely unforeseen ways. And when thinking about how to summarize the year, three words come to our mind: resilience, solidarity, and loyalty. Resilience, first of all, the resilience of our staff and partners in working under unprecedented circumstances, and also the resilience of the support associations and our members. The resilience also of our organization and our financial position. We benefited from having sharpened our focus and reducing our organizational complexity, a work which we did in 2019. And this helped us to respond with more agility as the situation evolved last year. Solidarity, the second main word. Solidarity has always been at the core of our work, but in 2020, it became the main driver. Solidarity with low-income people we serve, for whom this pandemic has been particularly challenging and has led to increased global poverty and inequality. There was somebody who said the work of 10 years seems to have been wiped out in a matter of a few months. Solidarity also on the part of our investors who have stayed with us and also step out of the usual investment to even donate towards our relief funds for partners. The third big word, loyalty. Our members and most of our investors have remained loyal to Oikocredit during this time of crisis. When we look around us, we see other funds that have had to close. Our members, on the other hand, showed exceptional commitment to our mission, which is as important as ever in these challenging times. If we move to the next slide scene, we will see that this is the map produced by the World Health Organization with the pandemic situation at the end of September 2020. I am sure you will not be surprised to know that all 64 countries where Oikocredit has partners have cases of COVID-19, and some of them really bad outbreaks of COVID-19. In most countries, this has led to a lockdown which slowed or nearly stopped local economic activities for most of 2020. You can almost say that in its impact, COVID has been an equalizer, recognizing no borders, no economic status, no religion, no gender, no rich, no poor. And if you go to the next slide, we will see here the impact on partners all over the world, as we have also seen here in our countries. But all over the world, people have lost their jobs, businesses have collapsed, families have struggled to stay afloat. If we look at the specific sectors that Oikocredit works in, we see that in microfinance in particular, many microfinance clients, especially in urban areas in the informal sector, have not been able to go about their businesses, have not been able to generate an income, and have struggled to repay their loans. In agriculture, while the impact has been slightly less, partners have seen disruption in supply chains, shortage of labor either for the planting or the harvesting season, reduced or more difficult access to their regular markets, and increases in the prices of basic agricultural inputs. In general, we can say that the low-income people and communities that are a primary target for Oikocredit and its partners have been particularly vulnerable. And while many of us have some social or economic buffer to help us through these difficult times, poor people do not have the same safety nets and struggle to respond and stay afloat. So this is where the differences lie in the impact. COVID has impacted all of us, but there are differences in the way that we are able to respond to the impact. And poor people have been particularly at a difficulty in responding. So how has Oikocredit responded? And we go to the next slide, but before that, if there's anything not clear, is there any question or clarification? No, there we go ahead then. So how has Oikocredit responded, and how does it continue to respond to the ongoing crisis? Very early, when the pandemic exploded, we decided we would focus on existing partners. No new partners. So that was for the past year, for most part of the year, no new partners, to limit the risk that we would run in financing new organizations that we don't know very well yet. And by focusing on existing partners, we would be more able to respond to their needs. We also decided that we would intensify the contact and conversations with partners about the potential effects of the crisis, more than before the pandemic. We also offered the possibility of financial support. We expected partners to request payment holidays or some liquidity support. And internally, we developed fast approval processes to help partners in distress. So for example, if they ask for a payment holiday or a quick disbursement of an approved credit line, we would be able to do that. We adjusted our processes so that we could approve refinancing, rescheduling, and restructuring applications quicker. We also supported partners with a special section on our website to help them manage the crisis. We did a series of workshops on managing cash flows and revising business continuity plans, for example. And we offered other trainings and webinars. We had a CEO partners platform. We had a webinar on food security and agriculture. And we actively collaborated with our peers, other social impact investors, on guarantees for rural microfinance. And we also aligned our systems with the way our other peers are handling repayment requests and rescheduling requests. So we tried to align as much as possible. On the next slide, you will see one of the initiatives that we launched very early in the crisis, and we call this the Corona Solidarity Fund. With an initial contribution of 25,000 from Oikocredit International, we set up the Corona Solidarity Fund in the Oikocredit International Support Foundation. The fund has helped many partners, micro and small enterprise clients in the informal sector and in low-income communities with several things: awareness training on the virus and how to protect themselves, but also actually supporting them with the cost of sanitation materials, personal protective equipment, so that they could continue moving around. And in some instances, in the case of some micro clients, we help them to set up sanitary facilities in their businesses so that the business could remain open. Now, after the 25,000, this was contributed by Oikocredit International. Contributions also came from Oikocredit Foundation Germany. So this is the foundation of the German support associations, and Oikocredit Netherlands also contributed. So this allowed us to disburse over 70,000 so far to 38 partners by the end of last year. And this benefited roughly about 100,000 individuals. So we have now broadened the fund's objectives to help partners adjust their operations to continue their business in innovative ways. An example is our support to a project partner in Cambodia. And we will see that in the next slide. So here we see we have a partner, Shamroon. So this project partner was established in 1995 and is a microfinance institution providing financial services to poor and low-income Cambodians. It has a presence in 15 out of 25 in Cambodia, and it has a network of 21 branches, both urban, semi-urban, and rural areas. And here you can see some other details about the organization with 40,000 active borrowers, 82% of them women. So what happened with in Cambodia? If you look at the next slide. So the Cambodian economy was forecasted to be one of the hardest hit in the region by the economic downturn brought about by COVID-19. One reason for this is the economy's dependency on global supply chains that have been severely impacted by the lockdowns and associated effects on consumer demands in Europe and in the US, as well as the complete shutdown for a while of cross-border tourism activities. So hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost permanently or temporarily in the garments, tourism, or construction sectors, meaning the loss of support for families relying on the income of family members engaged in these sectors. The garment industry of Cambodia has been hit hard, and finding new jobs will be a tough challenge for over 100,000 Cambodian garment factory workers who are now left without work. So how did we support our project partner, Shamroon, support their end clients in the face of this situation? And the next slide will show that in response to the situation of families and clients, Shamroon had restructured loans, adjusted their policies to provide for grace periods and payment holidays, and reduced or canceled penalty fees. It also ran a food security drive and provided a social emergency loan. But it wanted to do more with a view to the future. So they developed a program providing what they call business development advisory services to help families look at and engage in new economic activities. So a total of 400 participants will benefit from this program. And we, through the Support Foundation of Oikocredit, we are supporting this program this year. So this is one story of how a project partner is supporting project clients from also benefiting from the support of Oikocredit. But now I think we have also a short video from a client sharing her story of how she coped during the pandemic.
Kwa saa hii ugonjwa tumekuwa tukiogopa sana kwa sababu imeendelea kuongezeka. Biashara nayo imeendelea ikienda chini. Kulipa manyumba, kulipa mafundi, kununua hata material, kazi imekuwa ngumu. Hakuna customer wamepotea na hii ugonjwa. Kazi imekuwa ngumu kidogo. Nimekuwa nina save na UNI Microfinance Bank. Wamekuwa wakinisaidia na mask na sanitizers zenye nimekuwa nikipea watu kazini. Kwanza lazima tu make sure mtu ako na mask. Ya pili tuna sanitize ama anaoga mkono, ndio tuweze sasa kujadiliana ni nini anataka na kupima. Sasa kazi inaenda ikirudi vile watu wanaenda kuchukua measures ya kujizuia COVID. Tumekuwa tukitengeneza masks na PPEs za kudistribute kwa mahospitali na wapatia. Hiyo pia imenisaidia juu inaniletea customer wengi kwa kazi yangu.
And here in the next slide, you see a summary of what we have done in capacity building in 2018, 2019, and 2020. You can see that we have not allowed COVID-19, the pandemic, to consume all our attention and our energies. We have continued to find space for programs that build capacity, bring hope, and new opportunities, even during these difficult days. In addition to providing loans and equity investments, Oikocredit also supports some of its partners through capacity building and technical assistance. These initiatives help our partners acquire new knowledge, new skills, new technology, facilitate access to markets, and also, very importantly, strengthen their capacity for governance and management, both in social and financial performance. At the start of 2020, Oikocredit had 11 capacity building programs already being implemented. And we were all geared up to do a lot more last year. But in the end, we were only able to do a further 9 new initiatives. Our capacity building spending over the year was about 700,000, roughly the same level as our spending in 2019. And we were able to support 71 current and potential partners in 26 countries. Almost 80% of this support was for partners in the agriculture sector. Almost 20% was for partners in financial inclusion. So while we were not able to really ramp up as we had hoped we would be able to last year, we are nevertheless satisfied that despite the extraordinary circumstances of 2020, we have been able to maintain this level of capacity support for partners during the pandemic. Most of our capacity building work is funded through Oikocredit International Support Foundation, which raises grants and donations. Key donors to and strategic partners in our programs in 2020 include the Dutch Support Association, Oikocredit Netherlands, the Foundation of Oikocredit's Support Associations in Germany, and external donors included the Church of Sweden, churches acting together, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Germany, the Multilateral Investment Fund managed by the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Swiss Development Cooperation Agency, as well as USAID. Now, what does one one project look like on the ground? As an example, let me share with you the next slide. So we call it Transforming Rural Rwanda. This is one capacity building program that we started last year despite the pandemic. And this is a project supported by the West German Support Association in Rwanda. In Rwanda, as some of you probably know, tea along with coffee is recognized for its potential in fighting extreme poverty in remote rural areas and in earning much needed foreign exchange for the country. Tea factories are usually located in their geographical area of operations, and while each tea factory usually has a tea estate, they also rely on tea leaves supplied by smallholder farmers and cooperatives in the area. What you see here is part of Karongi district in western Rwanda, where many years ago the government had a tea estate and a tea factory. Unfortunately, the government had abandoned both, and smallholder farmers in the area now typically grow cassava and bananas for consumption. A few years ago, a family tracing its ancestry back to this area took over the government tea factory and the estate. It secured a loan from Oikocredit, renovated and refurbished the tea processing plant. The owners wanted to bring progress and improvement to the lives of people in this remote area. However, the cooperative of farmers could not provide the tea leaves needed by the factory to operate near its full capacity. While the farmers, on the one hand, were eager to diversify and introduce tea to their small plots, they could not afford the price of seedlings, nor did many of them know how to start. So in the next slide, you will see that in 2020, this is how the project started. The Oikocredit International Support Foundation signed a memorandum of understanding with the tea factory and the cooperatives working with them, and the tea nursery project was born. This meant developing or growing 2 million tea seedlings that would be distributed to 2,000 smallholder farmers. The tea factory owners would contribute 25% of the cost of each seedlings, the cooperatives contribute 5%, and the farmers contribute the cost associated with land preparation and transport of the seedlings to their farms. Oikocredit, with funding from the West German Support Association, provides a consultant for the mentoring and training of 2,000 farmers on sustainable tea crop management, plucking and delivery of tea leaves, and land utilization strategies, among other things. So this is really an initiative where we can say it is really transforming the remote rural areas and transforming the lives of the people in these areas. So now moving on to the financial results. If you go to the next slide, you can see here a simplified overview of the income statement. In 2020, as I said earlier, we made a conscious choice to reduce our financial risk and only focus on existing partners. And also, so on the one hand, focus on existing partners to reduce our risk. On the other hand, also take additional provisions in case partners could not pay back. These moves or this decision reflect a decision to protect our capital and maintain high levels of liquidity in response to COVID-19 and to the ensuing financial uncertainty. But this also meant two things: an impact on the growth of our portfolio, and because of a smaller portfolio, that also meant an impact in our income. So a reduction in our total operating income from 65 million in 2019 to 41 million in 2020. A continuing factor, of course, was also the prevailing low interest rate environment, which impacted both the interest that we earned from our loan portfolio, as well as the income from our term investments. Another thing that we need to take into consideration is that in response to requests from partners in the situation that partners were in, we also gave payment holidays to partners needing it the most in view of the pandemic's effect, and this also affected our income. So that's on the income side. On the cost side, we took even stricter control of our costs. So strong cost controls already followed our strategic reorganization in 2018 and 2019, and this made a positive contribution to the results. Our costs were below target for the year, decreasing by 7.7% to 29.1 million. There were no exceptional operating expenses. General and administrative costs were at the same level as last year in relation to total assets at 2.3%. So the net result then that you see is a negative 22.2 million for the year, compared to a positive 14.3 million in 2019. So as Vincent pointed out in his introduction, we have a financial loss for 2020. Now, this outcome was not only in line with our expectations and earlier communications to members, but even slightly better than our original projections early in the year, where we thought or we projected a higher loss. So if we move to, and then just to mention maybe that total loan loss provisions and impairments on equity increased from 93.2 million in 2019 to 106.5 million in 2020, mainly because of the pandemic. Additions to our loan loss provisions rose from 9.3 million to 32 million. So you can see that we have really been very, very prudent with our provisioning last year. If we move on to the next slide, this just gives you some information about our development financing portfolio. So we continue to have substantial network of partners, 563 partners in 63 countries. And although that is a slight reduction from 674 partners that we had in 2019. But that reduction is also because we had decided strategically to withdraw from non-focused countries. And that meant we lost 23 partners with that decision to move away from non-focused countries. We have still 14 offices in 2020 in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where the majority of our staff work. Okay, if we move to the next slide, these are some examples of our project partners. So here you will find, for example, Biz Capital, which is a partner in the financial inclusion sector. It's a digital lending platform for small and medium enterprises in Brazil. And to date, they have provided loans to over 10,000 businesses in 1,200 cities. And this is really an example of Oikocredit's commitment to support financial inclusion for the missing middle, for the small and medium enterprises in Latin America. And here again in agriculture, you will find Ecokim, which is representative of cocoa and farmer cooperatives across southern and western Cote d'Ivoire, which works with smallholder farmers to ensure that they receive a fair share of the profits of cocoa by selling directly on the international cocoa market. And finally, at the very rightmost, you find MCOPA, which is in our renewable energy portfolio. And MCOPA is Africa's leading provider of pay-as-you-go off-grid solar. So here to MCOPA, we provided a loan of 5 million, which expects to reach 10,000 households in Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, giving them a path to ownership of off-grid solar power products. Moving on to the next slide. Here you can see that the 10 countries where we have the highest outstanding capital. And this is basically similar as in 2019, with the exception of Peru, that has now been overtaken by Indonesia, that is now in 8th place. And here you will see, and this I'm sure is a concern for all of us, that India is the country where we have our biggest exposure. In the next slide, you will see that this is a representation of the scores that we are monitoring in what we call Oikocredit's Environmental, Social, and Governance Scorecard. These scorecards remain a key tool both for selecting new partners and for monitoring partner performance. The target is for at least 70% of partners to attain an ESG score of 55 or more out of 100, and we are happy that we continue to meet this target. And in fact, in 2020, 88% of our total portfolio had an ESG score above 55. Using the ESG scorecards helps to ensure that our partners reach the right target groups with responsible products and services. All enterprises that we support must benefit low-income people and communities. The scorecards also address environmental awareness and impact. Enterprises score more if they have a cooperative structure, which enables low-income people to participate in their operation and management. And they also score high if special attention is given to women's direct benefit and participation in decision-making. These assessments of the environmental, social, and governance scores enable us to identify the strengths and weaknesses of organizations, compare partners, recognize leading practices, and incentivize or provide capacity-building support where needed. They also alert us to key areas where an enterprise scores poorly, and our support should be critically reviewed. The next slide is on the net asset value. The net asset value shows you what a share in Oikocredit is technically worth. However, the nominal price at which members can request to purchase or to have shares redeemed is 200. So the net asset value is important as an indicator because Oikocredit's articles do not allow for continuing redemptions at the nominal price of shares when the net asset value per share is lower. The net asset value per share is calculated by adding the total amount of capital and reserves and dividing the sum by the total number of shares issued. So the net asset value per share as of 2020 stands at 210.550 euros, 210 euros and 50 cents as a result of the loss generated by the society in 2020. The next slide is the dividend proposal that will be going before the annual general meeting in June. So every year, as you know, the Oikocredit's managing board and the supervisory make a proposal to the members on what the dividend to be paid for the previous year could look like. And the members then vote on this proposal or make other proposals. When making the proposal, the boards consider the organization has a healthy enough financial position to be able to pay a dividend and what would be a fair return for investors. Based on our in 2020 and the medium-term financial outlook, the managing board, supported by the supervisory board, will propose at the AGM in June 2021 award no dividend for 2020 to protect Oikocredit's reserves, as we have not seen the end of the tunnel yet with COVID-19. In the second column, you will see how we adjusted the dividend proposal for 2019. You will remember that originally we were hoping to give a dividend of 1% over the 2019 results, but the pandemic prevented us from being able to deliver a dividend in the end. As COVID-19 unfolded, many of our assumptions supporting our original decision at the start of 2020 to propose a 1% dividend in 2019 were overturned. In recognition, our members agreed not to pay a dividend, but instead to strengthen the general reserves to help absorb the loss we could already foresee and assist our crisis support for partners. We appreciate that many members and investors not only maintain their investments in 2020, but also proactively ask what additional support we and our partners needed. The next slide will show you that we plan to publish, I think this has already been done and you have already had access to this. The annual report has been published and you will find much more details about our work and our financial results in this document. And the next slide then is on the outlook. We have planned much for 2021, but recognize that the coming year will be still full of uncertainty. But we nevertheless expect 2021 to be a year of recovery, despite the economic upturn being relatively slow in many of our focus countries. Closeness to our partners should enable us to respond well to opportunities as local economies recover and allow us to help stimulate economic revival. This year, however, is very likely to still witness increasing poverty in many low-income communities. The collaboration and cooperation between social impact investors in 2020 should help us align our efforts in delivering support to low-income people and communities and in achieving greater social impact. As the crisis eases, hopefully, we will reduce our liquidity to more normal levels and thereby fund growth in the development financing portfolio. By mid-year, we should know more about the post-COVID landscape, and by end 2021, we expect to resume profitability. This may not necessarily mean that our income will be high enough to pay a dividend for 2021. After 2 years of making Oikocredit fitter for the future at central office, we will review our model for raising capital to ensure that it is equally fit for future. We have built our capital raising model over the past 45 years, and to date, it has proven to be extremely successful. However, regulation on capital raising is increasing globally, and we are looking for possibilities to make our model more resilient in the face of evolving financial markets regulation. We will collaborate very closely with our support associations that currently offer investment into Oikocredit in the search for improvements in our model and will present any potential significant change to our members. We are also continuing to work on our strategy and involve members and our investors closely as we develop this strategy. And despite all the uncertainty, we have high hopes and ambitions that we will this year begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we also have high hopes and ambitions that the new strategy for 2022 and 2026 that we are working on will be a good start to a turnaround as we continue with the mission of Oikocredit.